Good evening, everyone. Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'd like to do some quick introductions. Up here at the table with me, to my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Williams, Etsy, and Godwin, and to my left, Vice President Malone, Directors Clausen, Eastham, and Recording Secretary Kim Colvin. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak, they need to complete a speaker form found at the table in the lobby and turn it in, and we can get right into community comment. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you would like to speak during community comment. Persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. All community comment directed at non-agenda items and agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting and shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker. So let's get right in it. First up, we have Jonna Higgins-Fries.
My name is Jonna Higgins-Fries, and I'm here tonight. My address is 1117 Essex Street in Iowa City, and I'm here tonight in regard to a petition to require masks of all students and staff in the district schools that's been signed by over 1,000 medical providers and parents within the Iowa City Community School District. I've emailed each of the board members, a copy of those signatures, and also Superintendent Degner. But we felt it was important to bring a physical copy as well. I wanted to just say a brief word about why we felt this was important. There's a simulator that's been built with federal funding called the COVID-19 Simulated Integrated Model. And modeling a 107-day semester with no mask requirement and no testing in a district the size of Iowa City with 13,947 students, we should expect 7,449 infections and 15 to 142 hospitalizations. And those are just the numbers for the people in the district, the children and the students. It doesn't take into account the community infections that are caused by spread from those students. I began working with the group of people who are working on this petition because of some very personal experiences I've had. I'm not a medical professional, but I do have 2 children who've been very critically ill with respiratory failure and other critical illnesses. And I tell you this not because I want you to feel sorry for me, but because I think it's really important that we think very specifically about the harms that will be done if we don't require masking, that we think very specifically about what these 15 to 142 children and staff are going to go through when they're hospitalized, even if they don't die. First of all, they'll be intubated as one of the main ways that they would breathe, or they'll be on CPAP, or they'll have oxygen by a nasal cannula. I can tell you that when little kids are on nasal cannulas, they have a really hard time walking around, and they pull it behind them, and they keep saying stuck, 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 in a way that breaks your heart. They'll be put on ECMO, which is heart-lung-kidney bypass. When that happens, they take a cannula and they put it into the carotid artery, and it snakes all the way down into the heart. And it goes to a machine outside the body that functions as heart-lung-kidney bypass. If you trip over those cords, it's like tripping over the vessels that lead to your kid's heart. Sometimes they can't regulate the amount of medication that's in the child because of the ECMO treatment, and then you get to hold your kid's hands down until they can get their sedative figured out so that they can't rip the cannulas out of their body. The kids will get infections while they're in the hospital. They'll have tubes in their nose. Sometimes they'll only be able to breathe enough to say, "Mama, help, Mama, help, Mama, help." And sometimes if they're able to speak and they're not sedated, they will beg their parents to kill them. These are the things that happen when children are critically ill in the hospital, even if they don't die. And I think it's really important that we think about that very specifically, because I know that it is against the law for this body to decide to require masks. But I think that all of us would agree that sometimes the law is aligned with what's the right thing to do for human dignity, and sometimes the law is not aligned with that. And we ask our children to think about that all the time in school. We have the opportunity to decrease the number of children who are going to suffer in the ways that I have just described if we continue without a mask requirement. And I and the 1,000 other community members, parents, grandparents, medical providers are asking you to do that and telling you that if you do that, we will have your support. We will support you, and we will be with you through whatever consequences that brings. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Sean Harmson.
Hello all, Sean Harmson, Iowa City. I have 2 students in the district. Some of you might know that. I have a son who is in junior high and a daughter who's at the high school, one of the high schools here in the district. A couple of things real quickly. I just want to relay. First of all, absolutely agree with the last speaker. Understand the legal situation that we have here in Iowa, and it's a horrible situation, and well, we all know it's beyond disgusting. Know that you're up against a wall with that, and also want to say that if you push that envelope, I'm also here to support this board for whatever comes its way, because I know that you guys are in the hot seat, and you need to know that you have that community support. One of the reasons I wanted to come up here tonight is actually my wife was going to come instead of me. My wife is a family medicine physician who covers small-town emergency rooms in several small towns across Iowa. She could not be here because she just finished a 2-day shift and hasn't been to sleep in 36 hours and is home finally, just got home about 3 o'clock this afternoon and is in bed sleeping, so I said I would come. From a medical perspective and from somebody who is a doctor, the masks are absolutely essential. She's been a frontline healthcare worker this entire time and is seeing more COVID showing up, as you probably have read, in small hospitals. We're hearing more about it from around the country. Just a story today out of another one out of South Florida. They started their school a couple of weeks ago under the same kind of political climate that we have here in Iowa, and they're record-breaking hospital admissions right now. And so a group of doctors before their shift, not during their shift, before their shift walked out and had a big press conference demanding that people get vaccinated and wear masks because they're just tired. We are probably only a couple of weeks away from that here in Iowa City. Again, we're in a tough spot. And so medically speaking, we all know that masks are effective and most effective when everybody is wearing them. We've been at this for a year and a half. If somebody still questions it at this point, I don't even know what to say about that. But anyway, so here to support you as you push that envelope, asking that you do push that envelope, because it is ethically and medically necessary to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Next up, Nora Berner.
Hi, I'm Nora Berner. I live at 911 Fairchild Street in Iowa City. I have 4 children, three of whom are in the district. I've spoken to you before about masks, and that's why I'm here again tonight. You know this is important to me, and I know it's important to you, and I know your hands are tied. I know that. What I'm here today is to tell you what I saw in orientation and in the first 2 days of school, and what my children saw in the secondary schools of City High and Southeast Junior High. The administrators at the very top level of both schools are unmasked indoors all day. One individual from Southeast Junior High who's in the top administration stepped onto my daughter's bus, had a mask around his chin, and pulled it up, and then immediately pulled it off again. That was the first time she'd seen him wear a mask in the 2 or 3 weeks that she'd been there for orientation and working on other things in the building, including regular school. I know your hands are tied legally, but how are we supposed to expect our children to mask in school out of the goodness of their heart when the administrators who they love and respect are not masking? My daughter, who I won't say which one because I don't want her to get in trouble, but of her courses at City High, 3 teachers wore masks. 3. That's not enough. That's not good enough. You know I'm scared. You know I'm scared for my son who's unvaccinated. I'm so appreciative of our first speaker tonight and all the work that she has done to collect information from parents and health educators in our district. I don't know what you can do, if there's anything you can do, but teachers and administrators who are supposed to be leaders have got to put those masks on. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nora. Next up, Jen Knights.
Hi there. I'm Jen Knights. I live at 711 North Gilbert Street in Iowa City. I am a parent to 2 students who are in the district. Luckily, my kids are both old enough that they have been doubly vaccinated. My son is at City High and my daughter's at Southeast. Now, I also recognize that you guys, as everyone has said, have your hands tied as far as issuing a mandate. I will say that all the parents that I know and love and talk to are terrified for their children, especially the ones who have kids that can't get vaccinated. And you know, when Nora came here the last meeting, I was so surprised that there weren't full chairs back there of parents here begging you to help us. But I realized that it's because we're so freaking tired and we're so burnt out from the last year and a half of trying to protect our children from this terrible disease, to protect our parents, our grandparents. Everybody in the community is at risk here. Last week when Mayor Bruce Teague issued a mask mandate for our city, parents all over my Facebook feed were so grateful to him, so relieved that finally there's something that you can enforce. There's something in our city that the university can enforce. That now finally there seemed to be hope that there would be protection. I work at the university. I have to be at the office now, and I'm surrounded by unmasked college students whose vaccination status I don't know. I'm hearing from my kids that most of the kids that they go to school with are masked, and yes, I'm hearing that the teachers are not. Many of the teachers are not. And that is infuriating to me. They need to be showing leadership. If you're not going to enforce the mask mandate that has been given to you as a gift, and I would say this to the university leadership as well, then at least every damn day tell those teachers to put their masks on. Remind them. I know you can't require it, but you can say every day, don't forget, there is a mask mandate in Iowa City. Don't forget, it's really important to the protection of our children. Every day, you have to be telling every person that is not required by the state law to do it, that we expect it, and this is how we're going to take care of each other. Because there isn't a question of if a lot of people are going to get sick if we don't wear masks indoors. It's going to happen, and it's going to be babies and our little children and our sick grandparents. If there is ever a time to defy a law, it's when you're going to save the lives of children. So please, continue to do everything you can do in your power. Before I step back, I just want to say, I am a parent that doesn't go to school board meetings usually. I don't usually go to PTO meetings. I really trust the leadership, and I think you guys have been proven to be great leaders. But this is a time that your community needs you to be more than great leaders. You have to be rebellious. You have to look for that good trouble. And do not let the children down, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. All right, that was our last speaker tonight, so we can move into our agenda approval. We do have an item, a quick update to the agenda. Item number 12 is no longer needed in the consent agenda, so I would entertain a motion to approve our agenda minus consent item number 12.
I move that we approve tonight's agenda minus item number 12.
Second.
All right, Kim?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, so now we can move into our consent agenda. Were there any questions from folks who reviewed the bills?
I reviewed the bill and I had no questions.
Anyone else? All right. Are there any items that directors would like to pull from consent?
I would like not to pull this, but on item 6, open enrollment request, I was looking at the number of enrollments into the district, and I was wondering if we have a chance we could get the staff to comment on whether or not those the number is unusual for this time.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and pull it so we can have a
Okay,
discussion
all
on
Fine.
it. Number 6. Anything else? All right. I would entertain a motion to approve consent minus item number 6.
So moved.
Second.
Kim? I don't know how we do the one that we pulled out of the agenda altogether. That's already out, right?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you, Kim. So item number 6, you just wanted to kind of hear about
Just a
little
staff
update from
comment.
the numbers that were on there?
Yeah.
There were quite a few.
I didn't hear the question. Can you repeat the
Yeah, I think I
question?
got most of it here, Amy, and then I'll ask if you have anything else you want to add on to it. But I think Director Easton's asking about the increased number of open enrollments into the district that we saw on that open enrollment item. Is that correct, Charlie?
That's right. Thank you.
Yeah, and so a lot of those you see are coming from Clear Creek, Amana, and the majority of those are open enrollments into our online program. Clear Creek doesn't have an online program. We've offered one or had one approved by the state, as we've told you guys, and you know that we're continuing that this year. So we had many students from the district that open enrolled into that so they could attend school through that fashion this year. We've talked a little bit about some of the challenges we've had with getting that online enrollment or the online program staffed and ready to go with schedules in that regard. And in a way, the increase of those requests has allowed us to offer more courses with actual teachers rather than some of the edge course solutions that we've had to look at employing. And so it did help with that, but it also created some challenges for us as we tried to get to the first day here. But overall, we're happy that those families felt like they had an option that kept their kids safe and worked for them too. So that was something we were happy to bring forward.
Okay, thanks. And can you remind us, I think open enrolled students bring with them the state appropriation from the district they come from, right?
Yeah, and historically, we've had a net loss on our open enrollment here, and we've been closing that gap really since we opened Liberty High School and been doing some things to close that. But they do bring their state appropriation with them. The funding follows the student in that example. So this should help that overall loss that we've traditionally seen. So it'd be interesting to see those numbers once they finalize here in October.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt.
Any further discussion on that? All right, I'd entertain the motion to approve.
I move that we approve consent item number 6.
Second.
All right, Kim, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
All right, thank you, Kim. All right, we can move down to 21-22 school year. Matt, I think you're probably going to kick us off.
Well, good evening again, everybody. We did kick off the 21-22 school year, and certainly a bag of mixed emotions as we kicked off the school year. A lot of students and staff excited to be back, but also, as we heard from some of our community commenters, some trepidation too, obviously around the COVID pandemic that continues to plague and inform our actions and our ability to be the way we want to be. So we did start yesterday. A lot of us went out to schools and were able to do visits. And I don't think some of the comments are accurate, but I was honestly encouraged by the amount of mask use that we did see from our students and staff. Of course, we know it's not 100%. It's not where we'd like it to be in regards to that. But we did see a lot of masks on kids. We did see a lot of masks on staff. So I think overall, from that standpoint, I'm not going to say it's super positive because, again, we would love to have everybody doing that and wearing one, and we continue to encourage them. That was a theme through the Welcome Back Week where we tried to encourage and promote mask use. Our principals have been asked to include a message on every one of their communications to get sent home to families to encourage mask use and vaccines for those that are eligible to get them as well. So with that, we've had a lot of conversation around the events at the end of last week with the letter that the state of Iowa received from U.S. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, and then the mask mandate that Mayor Teague imposed on Friday. So to that effect, we asked Council Holland to be here tonight to prepare a few comments that kind of sums up basically some of the conversation we've had or been privy to that potentially the rest of the community hadn't had. So I'd take this moment, if we could, to interview or invite Joe to come to the microphone.
Good evening, board members. Good evening, board members. I listened to the public comment, and it's hard to listen to that. I have friends with children in the district. I have partners in my law firm with children in the district. I know students who are immunocompromised, and it's really hard to listen and feel trapped by what state law says. As Matt said, we've had conversations virtually every day over the last 10 days. I've looked at the court filings in all the states I know where litigation is pending. That's Florida, Texas, Arkansas, Oklahoma, and Arizona, to see if there was anything in any of those cases that was a tool that we could use to move along, either impose a mask mandate or get involved in litigation. Unfortunately, they don't offer much relief. And interestingly, in none of those cases was the school district a plaintiff. I think in only one school district was actually a defendant along with some other defendants. It's been parents typically, and Oklahoma's interesting. It's parents, physicians, and the Oklahoma State Medical Society which have initiated litigation. I think that parents actually probably have better standing, which is a technical term. The right to be in court is standing. They probably have better standing than school districts do. We've considered a wide variety of approaches to the Iowa statute. I've probably read that code section more than any other living human being, trying to figure a way, maybe than some of my colleagues who represent other school districts in Iowa. It's written differently than for schools than it is written for cities. It's much tighter. Schools have far fewer options. You can debate the legality of what Iowa City has done, but it's not even a choice for the district. Litigation would be costly, and I don't know that that should be a factor necessarily when you're looking at the safety and well-being of thousands and thousands of students. But there's also intangible costs in terms of staff time and just the energy that would be devoted to it. And I don't think we can be blind to the political consequences there might be, or the consequences that might come back to the district, not just this year, but for years to come. And we have to, a certain extent, take a long-term view of what's best for the district and all those students and all those families and all the staff that make up the district. We've also been in communication with other school districts around the state and with lawmakers to try and look for alternatives. And I think particularly the one most promising, if we can see some movement, is the United States Department of Education and possibly United States Office of Civil Rights. There are a lot of concerns. I wish I could stand here and tell you that there was a way I could legally advise you to do this. And I do have a concern. I think that both the board and the community need to understand that if the board chose to pass a mask mandate, the administrators put their licenses at risk by implementing and enforcing that. And I'm not sure you want to put your administrators in a choice of either putting their license at risk or resigning to protect their license. It's a lousy situation. And what I want the board to know, and I want the public to know, is that we are constantly looking for ways to deal with this, both litigation and other ways, and we're not going to stop. I don't know. I fear, like some of the speakers did, what the next few days are going to hold for the student population. I guess what I'm here to say is I feel that because of legislative action taken and because of a peculiarity in the Iowa Constitution, which supports what the legislature did, that we just don't have the tools we need right now other than simply defying the law. And I don't know that the board is there. That's a policy decision for you 7 folks to make. So I don't know if you have questions. I'll try and answer those.
Joe, you mentioned that one of the consequences of defying the law is that the administrators could lose their licenses. Is another consequence that the district itself could lose its accreditation and the State Department of Education could come in and run the school district?
That is a possibility. When they passed this law, they didn't really put in specific remedies. There are some general remedies to file complaints with the Iowa Department of Education, a complaint process which involves an investigation, and it's a little unclear all the consequences they could impose. It could range from implicating funding and, as you say, implicating accreditation. And one of the I think the go ahead. I have a comment I might reserve for later if somebody has a question.
So, Joe, you mentioned that in the case in Oklahoma, some parents and I think you said medical professionals sued, and perhaps parents have a better standing even here in the state of Iowa. And if we saw parents either within this district or in the state that sued, could the district sign on as a sort of co-plaintiff, friend of the, I mean, if the board decided that was something we wanted to pursue, is that something that's possible?
It is possible. It requires permission from the court. It's called a petition for intervention, where you're not a party, but because you have a serious interest in the subject matter, you file a petition for intervention. And frankly, I think if that happened, the court probably would grant the district's petition to intervene. The state might challenge it for lack of standing because there's some law out there which limits the ability of political subdivisions to sue their own state because of the 11th Amendment to the Constitution. But yes, I think if that started, I think we probably would have a serious discussion about whether the district wanted to intervene.
You mentioned, Joe, and we had speakers refer to the Iowa City mask mandate, and since the last time we talked, that is a new development in our, at least the Iowa City component of our Iowa City School District. Granted, we have 5 municipalities, only one has issued a mask mandate. I'm just, and in our Iowa City schools, I mean, can we try to follow that mask mandate? Is there any way we could try to enforce it? I mean, I live in Iowa City. I was around in Iowa City a lot this weekend since the mask mandate was passed, and I still see so many people without wearing masks. So I'm not even quite sure how that mask mandate works from the city's perspective. And does it give us any ability, again, recognizing it's only one of 5 municipalities in our school district?
The way the statute's written, a city, it's actually fairly limited in what it applies to a city. It says they cannot adopt a policy which requires an owner of real estate to impose a mask mandate. It's sort of, they can't tell Walmart, a big box store, a Main Street realtor to impose a mask mandate. They can impose it citywide, but they can't require those private landowners to enforce that. The school district is written, you cannot implement, you cannot enforce or adopt a policy. So you are limited. You cannot enforce a policy even though Iowa City's adopted it. And I've looked at the statutes in other states, and some are written much differently. And I don't know who actually wrote the Iowa legislation, but it's very targeted and very difficult to find a workaround. I did actually had a conversation with Eric Gores, who's a city attorney, before the mask mandate. He was courteous enough to call and say they were thinking about doing it. We had a discussion about the differences in the limitations on cities and school districts. And I don't think the city was surprised that the district couldn't enforce the city mandate. And there's some practical problems too, obviously, with the school district being a multi-community body where the other communities have not done that, and we don't know if they are even thinking about it or will do it.
One last thing I'm just going to put a plug into for the continued dialogue with Secretary Cardona and his office and the Federal Office of Civil Rights. I think that potentially has got a good angle for us in our state, right, to come from that direction. So I just support the work that's been done there. Thank you.
So Joe, back to the city's mask mandate. Could the city actually enforce that mandate on school property? Because it's a mandate about individuals wearing masks in public places?
I can't speak for the city. I don't think they would have the inclination to come into school buildings and enforce the mandate. I think they have enough challenges if they wanted to enforce the mandate anywhere else in Iowa City, let alone come into the school buildings and enforce that. You know, they have a limited number of people, and it would be difficult. And one of the real challenges is with finding the people who could do that, and what do you do if somebody says no? Do you arrest a child because they won't put a mask on? I mean, it's unfortunate. There's a whole series of problems. It's just like the problems that the teachers and the administrators face. If a student won't wear a mask, you don't throw them out of the building because your job is to educate them, so what do you do? I mean, we're living in a world that's like quicksand.
Yeah, I'm not actually thinking about trying to persuade the rest of the board to ask the city to enforce the mandate. I'm just trying to explore all of our options so that the public will know what things we probably should not or couldn't or don't want to do. And I agree with Janet and other board members that I think the USDOE is probably, or the Office of Civil Rights is probably one of our best sources of relief, potential sources of relief here.
And I know Matt was in contact with them, and we've tried to make some other contacts, and I don't think we've had a lot of feedback. I think it's time to try that again and keep poking to see if we can get some action. And I don't think we're the only ones out there doing that. I know they have other districts around the country, let alone in Iowa, that are pushing for action because they have resources and tools that no one else does.
Right.
Yeah, they acknowledged receipt of our note that we sent them. No other substantive information yet, but acknowledged receipt and that it passed on. And then just as Joe shared, that obviously they've been contacted by lots of districts in these states with the same questions that we asked.
Joe, could you speak a little bit about, what would it mean in a real practical way if we did lose our accreditation and the state came in? I mean, what would happen in a real practical sense?
That's a tough question to answer. It could involve complete loss of potentially state and federal funding if you're not accredited. Your graduates may or may not be admitted to higher institutions because they graduate from an unaccredited institution. I really haven't had a chance to think about what a loss of accreditation means. There's another remedy is the State Department of Education simply takes over and runs the district.
Is that kind of what's happening in Davenport right now? The state is essentially running the district?
Basically, yes.
Yeah, they're working to retain or regain, their accreditation, JP, and so that was from some of that funding conversation that happened several years ago, and so they're in a workout process with that. But yeah, the state had an element of takeover with the district there and had appointed a superintendent, and then that superintendent, I think, left. Another one now is followed, I think, internally from the team, and so they're working constant communication with Des Moines about regaining that accreditation.
So in Davenport, their board can't hire a superintendent?
Right.
Okay.
So in light of JP's question here, So districts, if the state were to try to take over the districts can defend themselves, is that correct? We can ask the courts to intervene and so forth.
I wouldn't say they're completely unable to contest that, but the way education is structured in Iowa, the State Department of Education basically is the umbrella regulatory agency that regulates virtually everything in Iowa public schools. And you do have a lot of local control in some senses, but you also always have them in the background because they write a lot of the rules about how you implement those decisions. I'm not sure you want to take on the Department of Education, the State Board of Education, not head on. I think that could have really negative consequences for the district.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure I would argue for that either, but I have a lot of parents and a lot of kids that are in dire straits now because of this pandemic. So, and couldn't the district, and I'm asking for just to exchange opinions, not to propose action, wouldn't the district be able to say that we did not follow the law about not requiring face coverings because in this many of our students are subject to severe infection and health consequences, and we were trying to protect the students, which is not quite the same thing as saying that, you know, we got into physical problems because of blah, 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 blah.
I suspect that if you ask the Department of Education for guidance, you wouldn't get much. Matt asked for guidance on quarantines, and they basically said consult your local health department. I think it's no secret that masks and vaccinations have become heavily politicized, and I think the Department of Education is probably hoping to stay out of the crossfire. And I don't know where and it's made up of a lot of individuals, I think, some of whom probably think very much like you do and some who think very much the opposite. And but on their official stance, I don't think they would provide much guidance if you said you just had to have a mask mandate.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to reassure you that if I thought we had a remedy in court, we'd be there by now. Without any hesitation, last year we took on the governor and in partnership with ISEA over the virtual versus in-person education. And we did that because I thought there was a reasonable chance we might actually accomplish something. It didn't turn out that way, unfortunately. Here I have a hard time seeing what we would accomplish and balancing that against potential long-term costs. I just couldn't advise that tonight. Who knows, tomorrow it could be different. The landscape around the country changes every day, and I literally do look at what's going on in the litigation in other states every day.
I just wanted to have you touch on the difference between the states that have the ban on mask mandates by executive order versus being in code, because I know that was a distinction that we had talked about and it stood out to me.
Florida and Texas, their bans are imposed by executive order. And as of right now, the courts have basically told the governors no. That both states now, the courts have said schools can impose mask mandates. The governor of Florida in particular does not agree with that and has threatened consequences. In Texas, the Texas Supreme Court struck down, actually didn't strike it down, but suspended the governor's executive order, and the Texas, it's the equivalent of the Department of Education here in Iowa, the same day suspended their requirements that you not have mask mandates. Oklahoma and Arkansas, it's by statute, and their statutes are both much different than Iowa's in terms of the scope of who they affect. For example, the Arkansas statute does not affect private schools. Iowa statute covers all accredited schools, public and private in Iowa. In Arkansas, they made a reasonably good equal protection argument that you single out public schools when you let private schools impose mask mandates. That's not an argument we have available to us in Iowa. The other state that's had litigation is Arizona, and their mask prohibition is on hold because the legislature adopted the legislation and the courts determined it doesn't go into effect until September 29th. And I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen when September 29th rolls around, because Arizona is a very politically divided state. So as I said, we have a very, if I were on the other side of this, I might say a very well-written statute. It's a very tight statute, hard to find traction to say, here's the chink in the armor. The city has a little one because of the way the statute's written differently, and it applies to cities and counties. But school districts, it's very, very tightly written, it's very targeted.
Joe, this might be more of a political question, but when the legislature meets in September to redraw the boundaries during that special session, could they introduce other legislation to, I don't know how, but make it worse somehow?
They could introduce other legislation, and the likelihood of legislation making things more difficult would probably be enhanced by how provoked legislative leadership felt and how provoked the governor felt. They're probably going to session in October because they won't do it until after the public hearings on redistricting, which won't conclude until the third week in September, but then they'll go into session. That's going to be their primary consideration, but they're not prohibited from considering other things.
So, Joe, this is not necessarily a legal question either, but so how far do you think the state can go in imperiling the health of students in this district?
I don't know that I have an answer to that question.
Well,
There's a provision in the Iowa Constitution. It has Article 9 of the Iowa Constitution has one section. It started out as everything in it basically fell away in the 1860s. One section which says Iowa legislature can pass whatever laws they deem best for school districts. That's a paraphrase. I don't have the language right in front of me. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, Charlie.
Do you think there is a limit?
I think on the flip side of this, if they were compelling students to attend who had infectious diseases that were potentially fatal, say they passed a law saying, even if you have smallpox, you're required to attend school. I question the enforceability of that, but it's hard for me to think of a headlong effort, but certainly people can regard the existing legislation as, at a minimum, a cavalier approach to student health and staff health. Can't forget the staff, because some of the statistics you see in other states, there are more staff members infected than students.
Right.
Joe, one question. You touched on standing, and we talked about the fact that parents are the better people to pursue litigation in this case. So now that school is in session, let's say in 2 weeks, if we have, I hope it doesn't happen, but if we have a bad case where there's a huge spread of positive cases, including not just the students, but also administrators and the teachers, would we have standing in this case as a district, as a school board district, or not?
I think the teachers also have standing because they're in that environment. I don't know. I think one of the challenges is that ISEA represents teachers statewide, and they have challenges in constituents that may not see this the same way that you or I might see it. And I think so far they've been hesitant to take that up. But I think if they started seeing substantial outbreaks among their members, they probably would rethink that. But it probably would be the individual teachers, not necessarily ISEA, that had standing. Now, they might also join in that, but I think it's the affected individuals that really are the people who have the most direct standing, which students, parents, staff, that are the ones that are most likely to keep their claims in front of a judge.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any more questions for Joe, or we can let him go? All right. Thanks for your time, Joe. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe.
We're not done with the topic, so I might kick it back to you, Matt, to, next item you might want to hit on.
Sure. So next, I think we'll take some other kind of health and safety items that we've been working on. So I'll ask Chase to jump in here a little bit. We know that we've implemented a quarantine policy to start the year. We discussed that at 2 or 3 meetings ago, I believe, by now. And so we're in the mode of implementing that, as now we've been in school for a day or two here, so we'll be pursuing that. And then we also wanted to have a short conversation with you around some of the information we're learning around testing and vaccines as we continue to engage in that work too. So Chase, are you okay picking it up from there?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Good evening. As Matt said, a couple different health and safety topics. And first, a big thank you to Jess Jimerson, our nurse coordinator, and our nurses that are already back hard at work in our schools. And so we appreciate everything they did this year and continue to do this year. First up on the quarantine piece, as we've talked about, we're taking a little bit of a different strategy this year and partnering more with Johnson County Public Health as we do our contact tracing. And so when we have a identified positive case in the schools, our nurses will do outreach to talk to the students about who they might have been in close contact with in the schools. And Jess, if I mess up, jump in here. Okay. And then we will send that information to Johnson County Public Health along with a letter home to the families that says you've been identified as a close contact, you'll be getting notified or called from Johnson County Public Health, and that you'll be required to follow the quarantine recommendation that's provided to you by the county. We'll also then instruct the parents to reach out to the attendance office to let us know that their student is being quarantined. And then they'll have instructions to contact the teacher via email to obtain assignments. And then also we provide a link to closely monitor symptoms for COVID-19 and to follow the district stay-at-home guidelines. As I said, that's a little bit of a switch because we did that all in-house last year, but the county has agreed to continue their great partnership with us. And so we're going to try to provide the guidance so that there's kind of an instruction booklet for families when they are a close contact to know, here's what to expect from the county, and once you hear from the county, here is what we expect you to do as a student or as a staff member in the district, so they have that on the front end. It's only day 2, and so we haven't really seen this plan in action very long. I think as Matt mentioned a couple weeks ago when we talked about the quarantine guidelines, we're going to monitor it closely all year long, but particularly these first couple weeks to make sure that the strategy is working, and we can always continue to go back and look at it and see, okay, are there gaps? Do we need to look at something different? Kristen's done a great job already of updating our COVID dashboard with information just after the first day. So we'll look at that. That's available on the website as well, so people can see the number of positive cases and then also the quarantine guidance that we're tracking. That's high level and quick. Do you want me to go through the other pieces, or do you want to talk about them one at a time?
The directors have questions that popped into their head, and I might as well ask them before we lose
Just so I
them.
understand it, Chase, so the district staff, the nursing staff are going to actually do the contact tracing, and then the Johnson County Public Health is going to make a recommendation about the quarantine or isolation. Is that, am I right?
Yes. I mean, so it's kind of a two-tiered approach.
Okay, thanks.
All right, I think you move on.
Great. So if you've seen in the news, potentially the ACIP, which is the committee from the CDC, is going to come out with their recommendations early next week on the booster shots or the third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. We've had some initial conversations with our partners at UIHC. If you remember last year, they were great about helping us stand up some staff-specific clinics through the spring. And so we've reached out about what is the approach going to be this fall. They're waiting for additional information from the CDC next week before they put anything into motion. So I don't have a lot of detail to share this evening, but just want to reassure our staff and others that that's on the minds of our health providers in the community. We're working closely with them to make sure that those opportunities are available to staff this fall. Doing the math, it looks like the recommendation is going to be about 8 months out, and so the first round for boosters for the majority of our staff wouldn't be till the end of October or beginning of November, so we have some time on that. More likely than not, it's probably not going to be standalone clinics like it was in the spring. The amount of vaccine in the community is different. The number of places that individuals can get a booster are much greater, but we do want to make sure that we provide that information and work in concert with UIHC and Johnson County Public Health and our other partners as we did last spring. So a little bit of optimistic news on the booster and getting more information on that next week and be able to provide those directions to our staff as we get later into the fall.
I just want to say thank you, Chase, because I think I emailed you and Matt within 5 minutes of the news coming out that was available. And I just really want you to thank you for jumping on that right away to make sure that we could have at least some information that UIHC is looking into it tonight, because I know we have a lot of staff who's already asking some of us, will we do the same thing? So thank you for rushing into that.
Well, it's important. We heard the community commenters this evening. We know that the vaccine and getting the booster is a critical piece of us keeping down the spread, so we want to make sure those opportunities are available to help keep our staff in schools and in front of kids. The other piece we've looked at as we keep students and staff in schools is testing. And we're still in the process of what this is going to look long-term. And again, another shout out to some of our partners, this time our Healthy Kids Clinics and the work that Dr. Marguerite's doing to help us out. Initially, we believe we're going to use the clinics and the Test Iowa as our first step into providing some sort of COVID testing in the schools this fall. Now, there are some limitations on how that test can be administered, which we think creates some barriers that we might want to see if there's some other options. And one of those is that under the Test Iowa guidance, the test has to be administered actually by a parent and rather than the school nurse. And so we're not sure that's the most efficient way to test symptomatic students in the buildings. And so Jess and her team are exploring other options. There are some other options out there. We started with Test Iowa because of the connection and the partnership that we could work through with Healthy Kids Clinics. So we're using that right now, but we continue to explore that because we do believe it'd be more efficient and effective if our nurses could do that testing at the school site, of course, after talking with parents, right, and getting that parental permission, but doing it there rather than sending it home. And so we're still working through some of that, but we do have at least one partnership with the Healthy Kids Clinics on board already that we will start looking at. I can give you some broader scope that as we look at our philosophy on student testing, it will be targeted. We do not plan to do mass testing. We do not plan to do testing of asymptomatic students. It would be testing of students that present with symptoms in our health offices. Given the people we've talked to, given the research, is that's the guidance we've been provided, is that we're better to use our resources testing for symptomatic students than trying to do just random mass testing. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't have benefits. We're just talking about as we look at our resources and where we should spend our time, that we're better served by utilizing a strategy that would test students that are symptomatic in our schools. Jess, anything to add on that?
I think get my mic on. I think the other piece that was challenging about the Test Iowa site is there is a technology piece to it. We'd have to work with parents they have to go on and register the kit and then answer a bunch of questions and stuff. So there would be technology barrier with the Test Iowa kits as well. And not that we couldn't work with the parents in school, we'd have to get interpreters and I'm sure the Test Iowa website is all in English. So that was just another barrier with those kits as well.
I just have a quick question. We know that our governor returned some federal dollars that could have helped with testing, and I saw an article earlier today where the federal government is saying that individual districts can reach out for additional funding without going through the state. I don't know if you all saw that or if we can investigate that. I don't know how that works in this situation, if that's even possible or if I read what I read was accurate.
Sure. So I've had several conversations with some of our local legislators around this, and then also tried to reach out directly to the state. There was that additional funding that the governor had sent back originally around the testing. Some of the reasoning that she stated behind that was that districts already had funds accessible to them through the ESSER dollars. And that was what we received a presentation on last week, where I showed you guys how we were allocating out those dollars, how we considered community input into that, and then move forward our plan there. So they're really pointing us at that we would need to use those funds for testing purposes if we were going to use those, if that's what's available to us. If there was something that broke today, Ruthie and I wouldn't have seen that to know if there was additional ways for us to reach out. But the best information we've gotten would really be, it would be in one of those ESSER 1, 2, or 3 allocations that we've received is where we could support the testing. And what Chase is talking about doing here is where we would do that and where we would fund that from. And so there was an amount I showed you guys last time we were together where we still had some space, and so we would work to do that within there. But from what we've learned, there weren't additional resources actually to go get.
So, Matt, if we use ESSER dollars to do testing, and we don't have the other source, the money the governor returned, then that decreases the amount of money we have for other things we can do with ESSER dollars. Is that not right?
Yeah, exactly, Charlie. I think that's part of it, right? I mean, if there was the other funding to go to for testing, I also think that testing conversation happened at a time where capabilities for testing were much different when that fund was sent. And, we're public school districts. We're not medical professionals. We're not health clinics. And so I think for schools at that time, just trying to figure out how to serve their students, that was a pretty difficult conversation to say, okay, well, we don't need it because you have these other allocations coming to you. I think that conversation would be much different today about what we feel like we might have the space to do. I still think, like Chase said, there's limitations on what our group can do, but you're exactly right. I mean, if we divert funds to become a robust testing agency, well, then we're not putting those funds as directly at educating our students. So it's a balance in there, and I think that's why we've talked about from a strategy standpoint what makes the most sense and what can we do logically to help support people in their need to get tested.
And then Chase had a question for you too. So can parents get testing done to their kids by calling the district, calling the teacher, principal, SFA, if they want to, or do you think, is that part of our plan for administering testing, I guess? So.
I'm going to have Jess weigh in on that. She's
Right now, really, the plan is if our nurses identify a symptomatic student, that would be really what we would be targeting to start. Doesn't mean we can't look at other options as we get into it and figure out what's working best and what we're identifying in the district.
For the kids, for symptomatic kids?
Yep, our symptomatic students and potentially even staff members if they're symptomatic. They could take one of these tests home and do it too. That's with the Test Iowa site. So we'll look at what other options we can find for testing in the district too.
Okay, thanks.
So the last piece I'd have on this, lots of things, would then be vaccines, of course, for 5 through 12-year-olds. And, we keep reading that these will be available later in the fall, but we're not going to wait until, it's tomorrow. So we have already, again, that was part of the conversation with the OIHC is looking through the strategies and what we would try to do to make sure that we provide those opportunities for students that would like the vaccine between the ages of 5 and 12 to get the vaccine. Again, I think it's going to look different, obviously different from our staff clinic in the spring, and even different from the clinics we did for our high school students late last spring. We just feel there's a large difference between a 17-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so it will probably look different, but we're still working through that and how that looks and where those sites would be. But it's top of mind and something we continue to work on as we move into the school year. So, Matt.
So I really think that's our, we do have an enrollment piece we want to cover with you, but that's kind of our conversation on the health and safety component. So, you know, if there's any final questions, I think one thing I'd want our community to hear us say is, you know, there's no hand wringing here of, you know, I mean, I know we've used that phrase, or our hands are tied a couple times, but we're trying to overturn every rock, look for any possibility for a way to protect and keep our kids healthy and safe. And so it's not for a lack of trying or looking for the different opportunities and avenues. You guys have spent a tremendous amount of time on it. Our team has. Joe's reference, we've been talking to him on a daily basis about these, and we're not going to stop, right? It's just not because the school year's here and that now we're going. We know that things can change rapidly and evolve quickly. So I'd want to reassure people that just because we've had this conversation or this is where the conversation's at 2 days into the school year doesn't mean that's where it's going to end. We're going to continue to learn more, get more information, more data to make those informed decisions. So we're just as highly concerned as all of you are and looking at it constantly. But unless you guys have more questions on that, we'll kind of shift to an enrollment piece that I know we've been getting questions around, and we kind of outlined our general strategy to you in how we looked at those ESSER dollars to account for some of our staffing components. But Amy has an enrollment update to provide to you here this evening.
Good evening, everyone. I provided the elementary RAM document tonight in board docs, and just to kind of tell you where we were a year ago, we had all of our buildings delineated into RAM levels 2 through 5. And on this document, you can see we have our buildings delineated in RAM levels 1 through 4. So we definitely made that commitment to lower class sizes by making that move. And we did that through the infusion of the ESSER dollars. And when we staffed, we initially staffed in April. The RAM at that time was pulling 358 sections, but we did some foreshadowing and predicting of maybe where some class sizes would creep up. And what we did at that time, and this is why you see the highlighted areas, and all those highlighted areas, at that time, those numbers looked different. And any building that was at the K2 level, any class section that was above 25, we went ahead and allocated an additional FTE there. And at the 3rd through 6th grade level, any classroom or section that was 29 or more, we gave another FTE out. And so that brought our FTE to 370, and that's what we staffed for. In addition to that, we allowed all of our buildings to hire another classroom teacher that we were calling an academic support teacher that could be pulled easily then into the classroom should our classroom numbers bounce back. If you all remember painfully, we were down with overall enrollment last year. So that prediction actually held out to be pretty true. If you look in the upper left-hand corner then, the amount of sections that we pulled last week when we went to do staffing again was exactly 370. So by miracle of all miracles, it actually matched up perfectly. So that number suggests that we had 370 staff in the field and that we had roughly 21 academic support teachers then available to us, 1 per building. We did have to do some shifting last week, and I know that for sure caused some concerns on, of course, a part of our staff and part of our parents, you know, that maybe we're expecting to have some really low class sizes in these certain circumstances. But as we were shifting staff, we were cognizant of the fact that we were doing that while we were, of course, adhering to the RAM. We weren't doing that in areas that were over the RAM, of course. And a big part of that shift was to the online program. In the spring when we were staffing, we had an April enrollment period, we've had a June enrollment period, and we thought that that was going to be the last one. But if you remember, in August, we went back out for another open enrollment period. And that really expanded by about 250 students just for the online program alone. And so last week, we moved 14 staff members, the majority of which went to the online program. And we are utilizing one of those academic support FTE of the 21 currently to have everybody sitting as you see here today. Now, we continue to monitor because our enrollment's still a little bumpy, right? I mean, some kids are not showing up. And we still have some requests for, you know, with different parent pleas about moving on-site to online or online to on-site. So we're trying to get that pinned down and make sure that numbers settle, and we'll continue to, you know, monitor this for the next couple of days. I do feel like we're up roughly 220 kids at the elementary level. I hesitate to make too many predictions and be completely wrong come October 1st or November when the state washes through this. But I think we're up a healthy 400, maybe even 500 students. You saw the open enrollment document, and if you would have thought back to the last couple of board meetings, we're seeing that open enrollment definitely tick up. So the one thing to be cognizant of is some of the families are coming to us specifically for the online program. Will they be here a year from now? You know, that's the other piece to that. But with that, I would entertain questions.
I don't have any questions. I want to thank you, Amy, but especially Luke, for jumping right in and getting the online program up and running. I know it was a heavy lift, especially with him starting day one and having to get his feet very, very wet. So thank you for making sure that students are getting schedules and parents' questions are being answered. I know this is taking quite a bit of your time, Luke, so thank you.
Thanks for saying that, Ruthina. The other thing, I would just echo that sentiment as well. Not only, I talked about the change at the elementary level, but when we had staffed at the beginning of the month, K-12, we were about 500 students in the online program, and we're up over 800 right now. And I think the thing that I would want to share publicly too is the amount of scheduling changes that we're having to do. It's unlike last year when all of our classes that we could offer on-site and in an online program were the same. It's not the case this year. Our program's fully accredited. We had planned to offer certain courses, and as everybody is making the request to come in, whether you're an open enrolled student or even our own students, you know, we've got to go back through schedules, we've got to go back through transcripts, and it's making this a much more painstaking process than it was last year. Last year was hard because of the sheer volume, but the kids in the courses were matching up, and this is so much more of a hurdle this year. So absolutely, big kudos to Luke and others that are getting that heavy lift off the ground.
I just want to repeat and echo what Ruthina just said, especially Luke. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Just really an amazing effort. I heard about one of the scheduling issues with high school world history and getting it all set. And I mean, I just think you're doing such invisible work that people don't see, but we see it. And I just wanted to say really thank you. And Amy, thank you. I mean, this document that you shared and the foresight and planning that you had in targeting how many bodies we would need, and I mean, it is amazing, right? I mean, you look at 4,900 to 7,600, and I mean, that's a huge change. Yeah. And I feel like for the most part, we've been organized and everything's ready to go, and it's because of you and your team knowing what we need to do, and again, just working 24 hours a day for the past 4 weeks. More invisible work, but I see it, and I'm so very appreciative of it, so thank you.
Thank you. It's a team effort for sure.
You know, one thing I just want to bring attention to, you know, I echo that too, and Luke, thank you. I mean, that's a sizable school, that number of kids. That's like bigger than all of our junior highs. So that's really something, and it's K-12. But I also, you know, just want to point out, one, this enrollment, I think, is the most accurate we've had. You know, I think that the work we've done, that this is the most on target, and to be at 370 and really come out, there's probably a bit of luck there too, but I know that there's really a lot of learning that's happened over the past number of years. So it's very impressive that we're able to pull that off coming in the year after last year. Also, I think it's notable to look at the differences in the SES between all of our schools and know that is a much lower difference than it used to be. That the gap between our schools as far as which schools have high SES and low SES is just a lot more balanced. And that's the work, again, that everybody did in kind of redoing those boundaries to get all of our schools to mirror our district better. And so from looking at this, it seems like most of our schools are a lot closer to mirroring our district as a whole, and we just have a lot fewer outliers, and our outliers aren't quite as dramatic as they have been in the past. And so I just think, you know, just to keep pointing out the work that we're constantly trying to do in equity to sort of, you know, get our district, all of our school buildings to reflect the students that we serve as a district as a whole, and continue on to point out and appreciate the work admin's doing to get our staff and administration also to reflect what our student body looks like. And it's a long road to hoe. We got a long ways to go, no doubt about it, but it's nice to see concrete steps being made, and then some of the results of that. So thank you.
Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Amy and Luke, you guys are just awesome, totally awesome.
I feel normal.
In looking at this and listening, you know, looking at the messages that parents have sent us about the various issues, I'm so glad that you're doing this and I'm not. I do want to ask in the chart you gave us, Amy, and the upper left-hand box shows district totals, and I assume that those totals are online classes as well as online? Okay,
Yeah.
great, thanks.
Yep.
And then, do you think that since the enrollments are still, or kids are still coming to buildings, right? Do you think we're going to be able to avoid getting the sixth grade class sizes above 30 or so in almost every instance, I guess?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Like I said, I monitor it every day right now just to watch that, Charlie. We'll have constant conversations about, you know, if a building tips over and you're talking about RAM level 4 and grades 3 through 6, you know, what might we do? Are we going to suggest that they pull that academic support teacher in? Would we go back to them with any sort of para support? But, you know, the 30, I think, is your question around health and safety,
yeah,
and
right.
we would just need to continue to have conversation here at the central office to determine what we might be able to do there. Most of our buildings have access to that academic support teacher still, and they could easily pull. Just one doesn't right now because they're utilizing that
Right.
to fulfill their FTE needs.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Yep, you're welcome, thank you.
Any other questions on that? I just point out just because I look at charts all day, there's a little formatting there on Garner and Lincoln. It looks like 2 lines got moved up, so there's a gap in the middle of it. So wherever that chart is, probably needs to get fixed.
Sure.
And I wasn't clear what the yellow highlighted ones meant.
Yeah, just at that time that they were in April, they were at the threshold of 29 or more, and so we added another section there.
Okay.
We should have taken the highlights off for this document. That was our work last April.
That's what the yellow, and then the purple is. It
Yeah,
says on
same
there,
thing.
The
I mean,
most recent update, okay.
No, yeah, those marks were from last April. That just meant we had infused an extra FTE at that time. Has nothing to do with today's current FTE.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, you know, one last thing. I appreciate the shout outs to Amy and Luke. They really have done a tremendous job. You heard Chase talk a lot about health and safety, and Jessica, and just want to take a minute to recognize the whole team. I could go down the table and just tell you an amazing story about each of these folks sitting right here and about work they've done, whether they're new to the district or whether they've been here with us throughout. And so I know it's stressful. We haven't had the most fun the last 2 weeks, to be honest, you know, with some of those things, but we're not always here for that, right? We're here to solve problems and to try to make things easier in the buildings. And I know there's frustrations from parents around class size or timing on things, but we've really tried to operate with this idea about making sure we show grace, empathy, and compassion at every turn for those folks that we do serve, because they're coming to us when they're frustrated or when they're upset because something hasn't worked, right? And so we're going to keep trying to do that, but a big credit to this team to make things go and to make a large system do impossible things at a time, and that we've repeated doing those impossible things over the course of time. Just even this document you have in front of you here around enrollment, in a very budget tight climate. Yes, we've had a large influx of ESSER dollars, but this was our enrollment document for a number of years before that, as you guys are familiar with. This level of precision, to have that efficiency around your staffing, is just unbelievable in a large district our size, that you see that, and that we're down to students tipping over these certain thresholds and activating staffing in the weeks leading up. And that doesn't come without pain points, right? Staff members learning those assignments last week, that's not always easy or the thing we'd like to do and the timing we'd like to have it. But it does also allow us to be super efficient with resources. It does allow us to achieve some of our equity goals about how we staff our school buildings. So very appreciative of the team and their work. And we're excited for the school year, but we're nervous for aspects of the school year as well. And so there's all of those emotions and feelings. But just like I'd said before, we're going to keep working at it. We're going to keep coming back at it every step of the way. So that's our update for this evening.
Awesome. I will ask, not tonight because, we've only had 2 days of school, but we have, would you say about 800 kids in the online program? So do some math, like 5% of our student body, that's pretty big. I'm curious to see how well our like grab and go meals are going, like how we're serving those 800 kids, or at least the ones that aren't open enrolling from other places. But.
Sure. So, so Amy said we're up kids. I did talk to Allison, and she said that we are that we basically been out of food at every school. So we're getting. Don't worry, everybody's getting to eat, right? And the good news is meals are free again this year, but the kids are here and are back. Grab and go has been down. We're operating 4 sites, and we've only been serving about 250 meals the last couple of days. We've been off for a couple of weeks with the transition back, so it's the first couple of days of school. So it might pick up. We'll remind families that option is out there. But I also think that's just a sign that the vast majority of our students are back in school. And so we know that our numbers of kids eating in the building are up. I did ask Allison, we don't have numbers on overall meals, because I think that's a comparison too to make from last year to this year. Between the two, are we up meals? I think we probably are. But our grab and go meals have been down the last couple of days in pretty low numbers.
I would say, 250 is kind of a low number overall, but it could mean everything to one kid, right? So
That's absolutely
I want
right.
to make sure that we're meeting that need. So appreciate that update. Anything else from directors on this topic before we move on? All right, let's go ahead and move on to the policy updates. We have it on here, just as a reminder for everyone, as a discussion item, and then an action item, and then a work session to kind of wrap it all up together. But most of these, if not all of these, are because of changes to legislation and required updates to policy and some cleaning up of some stuff. So I don't know, Matt, did you want to lead off with anything other than that?
Yeah, not really, President Eystone. So what you have in front of you there is the same thing you had in front of you last meeting. Unfortunately, we got short on time last time. We wanted to make sure we did these justice and scheduled a work session, I think, for the most compelling parts of the conversation and the ones that took some more time. There's some policy changes that are more straightforward than others. Several of the policies were affected by legislative changes. And so we do have an action item for you there to actually approve the policy updates with room for conversation more in the work session. I guess I would ask the board's preference. We do have a legislative changes document that has team members identified to walk you through any descriptions or information that you'd like to have surrounding those policies. We talked about them a lot in our legislative forums. We haven't necessarily had a conversation here at the board table. So I know we're going to spend more time on the intellectual freedom, diversity training, and pledge of allegiance in the work session. But if you'd want some more detailed conversation around any of those other ones, I know the team's ready to be able to present you a shorter overview on that, but it's kind of you guys' preference about how you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, we kind of look to the directors on it. I know that a lot of it's the kind of thing where we need to adopt policy for timeliness as the school year starts, and we just need to do that duty. The work session is going to be more like how do we support our students and our staff as these changes are going into effect, and I'm really looking forward to that conversation. But it is a different weight to it sitting up here at the board table. So if folks would like to have some conversation on it, I'm welcome to it. So I'm just going to look around.
I'm just kind of interested in the complaint procedures that are outlined in here. I think we went away a little bit from the of how students and staff and community members were asked to file a complaint, but we still have a clear complaint process. Is that not correct?
Yeah, and are you speaking again more to the some of the information in that first component, Charlie, the intellectual freedom, diversity training, and Pledge of Allegiance in those policies where that
and
part that
for any kind
activates
of
the
complaint,
hearing.
for-
Yeah, so we'll work through some of that. We would again work through that conversation in a little bit more detail in the work session. As far as complaint procedures, of course, we do have complaint procedures where people could continue to file those. There is a part that got worked into the Ed Appropriations Bill around what activates a board hearing. We would still try to informally solve those problems before we would go right to a board hearing around one of those pieces. We would hope that most simple complaints could be handled through our resolution processes that we have for staff or students or community members in regards to a topic. So we would still have those normal channels. There's just a special provision that could also call for those board hearings in that event.
Okay, thanks.
The only other thing I'd add to that, Charlie and Eric had to step away, but in the policy series that the board adopted, was that in June or last spring, we went to the new model. Some of those policy processes or those complaint processes, how a student, a staff member, or a community member walk through it, are in the 100 sections, and so you might not see them updated in the update tonight, but they were updated when the board adopted that larger group of policies earlier in the spring.
Right, thanks. And I mainly bring that up because it seems to me like that maybe we could be a little bit more affirmative in how we're telling the community, students, staff, or how to do a complaint. That there is a procedure, and we'd ask people to follow that when there are disagreements about decisions that are made, wherever, at whatever level we're at. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and it'll be a nice transition to our next topic because you get to meet a nice new member of our team that I think is going to help tremendously with that. So that would be great.
Everybody okay with kicking it off to our work session at this point? And we will go through with, the action item when we get to it. So let's go ahead and move on to our third discussion item with our equity update.
Sure, and so first I'm going to introduce Miss Janet Abejo Parker, who is our new ombuds for the district. And so Janet's just going to come up and introduce herself and say hi for a minute, and we'll excuse her for the rest of the evening, but we wanted to give you a chance to meet her.
Hello, everyone. I'll be very brief. I timed myself to about 2 minutes. So my name is Janet Abejo Parker. That's ABEJO Parker. It's a lot. So Janet Abejo Parker. I am truly honored to be in the ombuds role. I look forward to serving all district constituents, including students, parents, guardians, community members, and employees. My background is in my educational background is in psychology, human resources, and law. I spent the last 10 and a half years of my career at the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. And what I did there was investigating and processing civil rights complaints where there was alleged discrimination in employment, housing, education, public accommodation, and credit. Part of my job was also to do a lot of education and outreach, not only to just address those civil rights complaints and investigate those civil rights complaints, but to let the community members know about their rights in regards to those areas that I just mentioned, so that we can prevent the discrimination from even happening. I also was a mediator for those 10 years as well, and grew a passion for dispute resolution. I became an adjunct professor teaching dispute resolution for the past 10 years as well. So that's a little bit about me. I want to share briefly about the ombuds role. There are 4 core values or principles that are critical to any ombuds role, and that is independence, neutrality, confidentiality, and informality. My role is meant to be a resource for information and referral, a safe place to evaluate options in order to make informed decisions on how to move forward, and to also make recommendations for positive change in order to prevent recurring issues. Generally, the ombuds serves as a neutral party that helps resolve issues, particularly where there may be a significant power imbalance, a concern for confidentiality, or a fear of retaliation or retribution. I'm also just a resource that's there if any of the district constituents that I mentioned at the beginning just don't know where to go, don't know what to do in any given situation. So I want to be clear about that role. The Ombuds Office and my role is a supplementary additional resource and does not replace the current channels that are in place at the district for complaints or concerns. It's that additional supplementary resource that the district has, bravely thought that this was very needed and could be very useful for the community and all district constituents. So my current focus is to learn as much as I can about the district, as well as research best practices for ombuds positions, so that I can strategically build and implement this position into an effective and impactful role. I've been holding introduction meetings at the district level and hope to reach out to each of you individually as well as part of the school board to introduce myself a bit better. As I get more established, I look forward to rolling out more communication and information about my role and connecting with district constituents at all levels. In the meantime, an easy way to reach out to me and contact me is I'm in the staff directory on the website, but also ombuds@iowacitieschools.org has been created. So it's ombuds@iowacitieschools.org. And we've also created a direct confidential line that goes directly to me with any questions or concerns at 319-688-1312. So any questions for me right away?
No question, just welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Janet's going to be great. She's going to help us get better. And some of the early conversations we've had, we've spent a lot of time, she's spent a lot of time really researching what best practice around an ombuds office looks like. She's connected with districts in St. Paul, another public school district example for an ombuds, and really getting a solid framework and process around how we use this position because it's new to us. And I think like she outlined there with those core tenets and with the pieces that we want to make sure in place really gives us a great opportunity to challenge our system in ways to be better where we know we might have some deficiencies at play. So welcome to Janet officially, publicly here, and we're excited about what she's going to bring to the district. As far as the other equity update, we wanted to put this on there, make sure we had it as a recurring item as we've committed to monthly and not lose track of that. I did just put for your refresher that equity action step document we had created in the July of 20. As we approach our board retreat here in September, we'll probably want to have some conversation around the equity action steps as we move into this year. But an important frame of reference for you is I just wanted you to know, as you do know, that we don't just do these things as a one and done, right? That, okay, well, we talked about hiring an ombuds person and now you see her finally, here in person tonight and creating that system and then implementing that system. And implementation is where we're at with some of these other components as well. We met with the PBIS and Rethinking Discipline group last year to come to some recommendations. Now we're into the implementation phase of that work and trying to lead that work. Restorative justice was another big component that came out of that work, and so a third of our schools will be participating in that work this year as we continue to do the culturally responsive teaching and learning with professional development from Director Gray as we work through the year as well. The social studies curriculum review we knew was another component, and that work will now be an implementation phase for this year. And so I guess I just wanted you to have that information again, so as we think about what we bite off in addition, that we have a good frame of reference that it's not like that other work's done. And it's never really done when we talk about equity work. We all understand that. But just kind of knowing where we've been in the last year, the things we had committed to, the work we brought forward, and then what are those new aspects we need to look at too that were maybe some of those original thoughts that we had back in July of 20 that we might want to dust off in our thinking or see what's potentially evolved since that point.
Sounds good. I look forward to coming back to it in the board retreat. I know I don't know if you hear the plan, do, check, act way of implementing change, right? We planned it and we're doing it, and now we need to kind of check and make sure it's working and probably do some planning on our next steps and see where we need to tweak and move forward. So I appreciate that approach. Anything else, directors?
Amazing progress. It's very gratifying to see how far we've come. So thanks for the update, Matt. We
can move down to our action items. before anybody makes a motion or anything, there was one item that on, I think it's 213, there was a blank for how many minutes of community comment was in there. I would recommend that we approve it with a 60 in there, because that's what we say in our welcome at every one of our meetings, that it will last an hour. I don't like approving policies with blanks in them, so that would be my recommendation there when it comes time to somebody making a motion. But is there any other questions or comments at this stage? I'm sort of vamping a little bit till we get our last board member back.
Good catch, John, great.
All right. With that, I guess I would entertain the motion with that edit to number 213.
I move that we approve the policies with the edit to 213 to include 60 minutes for community comments.
Second.
Any further discussion, folks?
No, but I would note that Director Etsy just stepped out of the room.
So we can put the vote up and have some awkward silence for a little bit.
We can take the vote, and she would be marked not present at the time of the vote. That's your call.
Let's go ahead and take the vote.
Online voting is open. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Godwin, Clausen, Malone, Stone, Eastham, and Williams voting yea, and Dromey Etsy not present at vote.
Thank you, Kim. Move on to agenda setting. We do have a work session around our FMP 2.0 work scheduled on the 7th, and then our next board meeting on the 14th. And if I can get it to open. Kim, I was going to ask, what are the chances that we would have student reps ready on that one?
I've put a feeler out to, I guess it depends on how quick I get the response back. Sometimes, or they basically have an idea of who it's going to be right away, so I'll keep it there and follow through on that.
All right. I'd like to be able to get that going if we can, for sure. I noticed that was missing. Otherwise, we have a lot of our regular stuff up there. I assume we'll probably have another, discussion on just how the school year is going. We have on there our delegate assembly representative. Any other things that directors think we need to have on the 14th?
Sean, can we say something to the public about how we may want to proceed with continuing to review our mask requirements as developments occur in terms of additional board meetings? I don't know if we should put something on this agenda as
President Eiston, I might have one suggestion there.
I'm sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just said I might have one suggestion, Charlie. So under that 21-22 school year item, for a while we were listing out different components, and so maybe that would speak to what you're talking about, is that we continue to have a health and safety item under there where we talk about the masks, the vaccines, the testing, all of those different components we hit tonight that would be included on there, and that would be better information to the public about what we're doing in the 21-22 school year. We've done that at different times, and then sometimes we just get away from it, and we can commit to doing that. Make sure those detailed out on there if that sounds acceptable.
That seems a good plan for our part in terms of communicating that we are continuing to consider this issue.
Yep, I think that's good. We'll definitely want the topic on there, and I think having the more granularity on the topics is always good information for folks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Anything else? All right. Knowing that we have a work session still at the back of the room, I would entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thanks, everyone. See you in the back.